Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this edition of the Signage Experts Forum from Tightrope Media Systems. My name is Michelle Ali Murati, and I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator for Tightrope. We started this new webinar series earlier this year. It's geared specifically for Carousel end users who are looking to expand their knowledge of the platform and get the most out of their investment. Our first webinar was about new things that you could do in Carousel now that we have eliminated channel licensing. So if you want to check out the first edition in the series, we have that recording available on our YouTube channel. We'll be sharing that information at the end of the webinar. And today, we're here to talk about 7 awesome things that you probably aren't using in Carousel, some advanced settings. We're going to have Grant bring that to you today. If you have questions throughout the presentation, you can just put those in the question box, and we will get to those at the end of the presentation. So, just feel free to enter those at any time, but we will be addressing them at the end of the presentation. We had quite a few people registered for today, and so it might fill up. If you know of people that are signed up and for some reason don't get on the call because our space is all filled up, we will have the recording later on YouTube, so you can tell, if it's your coworkers or your friends, if they missed it, you can tell them we'll have the recording later. But it looks like we've got about 90 people on now, so I think we'll go ahead and start. Grant is going to be facilitating today, Grant Gartland, who is one of our Carousel trainers. So I will turn it over to you, Grant.
Thanks, Michelle. Yep, so thanks again for coming here to our Experts Forum on 7 awesome things in Carousel you're probably not using. As Michelle said, my name is Grant Gartland. I'm going to be the presenter today. I've been with Tightrope for the last 5+ years here. Oh, and there goes my Keynote application. Awesome. So like I said, I've been with Tightrope here for the last 5 years. I've been using Carousel for the last 10+ years. Worked at a educational access station here in Minnesota. So that's kind of where I got my my start. With our system. And I am currently the signage trainer here at Tightrope Media Systems, so I do the majority of our training sessions and install support sessions as well. And that's back. Let's see if we've got any more issues there. So our presentation today, so we're going to talk about our 7 awesome things here. We're going to start off by introductions and overview, which we're almost done with. Talk about our list of 7 awesome things, and then we'll take some questions and hopefully give you some answers at the same time. As Michelle said, please use the little chat window there in GoToWebinar to send those questions our way. So starting off with, hop right into number 7, awesomest thing in Carousel you might not be using: custom crawl fonts, colors, and sizes. So this is kind of one of those things that most people don't tend to utilize. Where you can find this is going to be in your channel configuration settings. So we're in Carousel here on our system. We're going to come to that upper right-hand corner in the configure area. And after we log back in, configure, click into channels, and then click into our particular channel that we want to edit the crawl for. So in this case, I'm going to be working with this My First channel, which comes on the majority of our systems, and then heading into the crawl menu. So this is where we can do our customization of our crawls. Now, the majority of people do tend to use the defaults that Carousel kind of comes shipped with here. That's to use Arial black font, 34 size, white text on a black background. So this is something you can go in, customize, use a different font, maybe one that you've loaded onto your system, or any one of the other ones that we have available here that ship with the majority of our Carousel systems. So this is one of those ways you can add just a little bit of a tweak. That way your crawl kind of fits in with everything else that you're doing, utilizing the same fonts you see in the rest of your bulletins. Now remember, this is a channel setting. So depending upon where your channels are displayed, the difference between a 55-inch screen mounted at eye level versus a 55-inch screen mounted 6 feet, 7 feet in the air, you might want to have those crawls be different sizes on your channels. So here's where we can change that size of that crawl. That way you can get a little bit more depth on that if you need to. One of the other options that is in here that kind of confuses some people occasionally is this option for offset. The offset will move the crawl further into the screen if you need it. Sometimes this is needed on older systems, especially if they were running on tube TVs, or if you're running a broadcast system and for some reason it's overscanning on your system, you can utilize that offset to push the crawl further into the screen to make sure it's fitting inside of your title safe or motion safe area, depending upon what you like to utilize. So those are some of our options for crawls. As we said, that's number 7 on our list, found in our channel configuration area. Number 6, we have countdown clocks. Now, some people know that they're there. Other people don't realize that this is a third type of clock that is available on our system. So when we're here inside of a zone going to create a bulletin, so here I'm in my kind of main zone here. If I click into New Bulletin and choose the Dynamic tab, I'll be able to find the clock bulletins. Most people tend to use the first 2 options, either utilizing an analog clock, so we get a little clock face here where we can put in our hands to show the time. Some people will choose to use a digital clock where you can see the date and time. But there is that third option for countdown. So just like very similar to our digital clock and kind of the options that we get here, we can set different colors for our hands and our text, things like that. We can choose a different background if we want to. And then down here, we can choose what we want to add as the caption. So what we're saying we're counting down to. Time left in the Toys for Tots drive. We can choose how we're centering that again, choosing our fonts. Choose a different font here, and we can either have that countdown to a certain time each day, if we're doing something like, time till the end of the shift, or time till the end of school, or you can choose a specific date and time. So this is where we might be doing for that Toys for Tots drive. So maybe we have until Christmas this year to get that all plugged in. Lock in that information, and then open up our preview. Time left in the Toys for Tots drive, we have 6 months and 14 days left to get our toys in for that. So this can be really great for, as we see, donation drives here, contests, time people need to get paperwork in, time until tax season starts, time till tax season ends, time till an election, things like that. A lot of people don't realize that that countdown clock is available there within Carousel. You can even choose to have it display minutes and seconds when you start getting down to hours. Up until then, you're going to see months and days. Once you start getting down to the hours, you start seeing hours, minutes, and even seconds if you so choose that. So again, that's in our new bulletin, the Dynamic tab. Within that clock bulletin, we just need to choose the style of countdown. And then we can see that countdown type bulletin. Our number 5 awesomest thing is the Excluded fonts list. Now, this is one that can be really helpful for places that utilize branding. We want to be very conscious about our brand, what fonts we're using, things like that. And this is one of the ways that Carousel can help you give a little bit of access to certain people, but still kind of help them stay within the lines. Or even if you're not that conscious about branding, there are just certain fonts in your system that you don't like, you don't want people to utilize, you can come in and turn those off. So getting back here in Carousel, within our zone from our main menu in our particular zone, so this is a zone setting, so you're excluding fonts within a particular zone, we can come to our zone settings menu and choose the second menu option here, lists. And here's where we can find our excluded fonts list. So this is a list of all of the fonts that are currently on my particular Carousel system. So this is the majority of the ones that get shipped with a brand new system here coming from Carousel. So if there's certain ones that you don't like, and kind of the jokingly the one that most people tend to think of is Comic Sans. Some people really don't like seeing that, especially if you're working at a big company where, hey, we've got very specific fonts in our brand that we want to utilize. We can turn that off. That way users, if they have the ability to edit templates, will not have the ability to select that Comic Sans font. Otherwise, if there's only 2 or 3 fonts that you want to utilize, start clicking away and take out all of those additional fonts with the exception of your specific branded fonts, which are the only things that you want to see. Now again, this is one of those things you have to do on a zone basis. So each time you create a zone, you would need to go through this process. But typically speaking, on most systems, there's only 1 or 2 zones that a majority of people are going to have that type of access in. So our excluded font list is our number 5 awesomest thing. Again, that's located in that zone settings menu, in the lists tab, and excluded fonts. And kind of right next to that, if you are looking at that lists menu, there is the option also for transitions. Now, transitions is kind of the opposite of excluded fonts. Right now, it tells you what transitions are currently available in that particular zone, so you can turn off certain transitions if you don't want to make them available. Again, you can turn off all but one. That way, maybe you only want to use fades in a given zone. You have that ability here within Carousel. Number 4, and getting a little bit more technical now, we have multi-level full screen alerts. And this is one of those options that was added back in Carousel 6. So many people know that the system can do it, but they don't really know how to utilize it or really how best to set up their system. And again, this is going to be utilized inside of our channel configuration menu. So in Configure, coming to our channel list, choose the channel that we want to set up a multi-level full screen alert within, and then choose Channel Setup. Here you'll find the option to subscribe to full alert bulletins. Most systems, most channels are going to have a minimum of 1 full screen alert. That way you have that ability to override your zone whenever you need to, or override your channel whenever you need to. Clicking on this will allow you to attach multiple full screen alerts. So now you can see here I have this my first channel, second full alert. So this is a full screen alert zone that I created in our zone configuration menu. So it has the same dimensions as my channel, which is the same dimensions as my other full screen alert. From that list, I have it selected and I hit add. And now I have 2 full screen alerts attached to the my first channel. The order we see them listed here creates an order of priority for us. So normally we're just going to see the channel. In this particular setup here, you can kind of imagine that the channel is always just defaulted to the bottom of this list. It's kind of the lowest layer. So if I need to, I can use this second full alert, and I can override the channel with some basic information. Maybe the elevators are being worked on today. So I'm telling everybody, I'm overriding the screen, hey, elevators are not working. Please use the stairs located to your right. Or hot water's turned off today. Apologies when you go to wash your hands in the bathroom that it's only cold water. we can put that type of information overriding that channel. But if something else were to happen, say there's a tornado coming and I need to activate a warning, I want to get a warning out to everybody, I could activate it in this full alert zone, and it will override not only the channel, but it will also override the second full alert zone. So I will only see my tornado warning bulletin. Now this is a relatively small example. When you start creating a larger system, multiple locations, multiple players, you can see where this can start to really cascade, and you can create quite a number of different levels. Probably the best example of this might be at a university, where you've got 3 players on 3 different floors in a building on one side of campus. So for that given channel, you might have a single full screen alert for just that channel. You might have a higher priority for all of the channels that are being shown in that particular building, and a higher priority for all of the buildings on that side of campus, and a highest priority for everything across the entire campus. So if security needs to, it can override anything else on the screens with lockdown information if needed. So these multi-level full screen alerts give us these abilities. It's kind of one of those things you're going to take some time, you're going to set it up ahead of time, and it's going to save you that time when you need to override screens in the future. It allows you to kind of narrow down where your full screen alerts are being directed when you need them. Part of our channel configuration, channel setup, and we're subscribing to full alert bulletins, but you do have to make that full screen alert zone ahead of time in order to add it. Moving on to number 3, our awesomest things you might not be using, weather forecasts. Now, this is something that a lot of people do tend to utilize, but they might not think of a different way to utilize it. So this is our standard My First channel that comes on all of our systems that I do know a lot of people tend to like to utilize. They like the look of it, they like the feel of it. So down here, we've got our currently 61 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy right now here in St. Paul, Minnesota. If I were to come to my weather zone, I could create a new bulletin going underneath my dynamic tab to weather, leave the same information in, leave the same layout, but now instead of leaving this as saying currently, giving my current information, I'll look at my list of available data fields and come down here to my forecast section. So you'll notice all of the items are going to start with forecast and then a number. Now forecast 0 is today. So the things that are going to be going on today. Forecast 1 is going to be tomorrow. So I can come down here to my forecast 1 section, and you can see the number of pieces of information that I receive for forecast 1. And I can come down here and say, forecast 1 title. I'll copy that little piece of information and come back in to edit my template. And now I can choose that currently option, and instead of having it say currently, I'm going to replace that with my forecast 1 title. Continue that process, again, grabbing forecast 1 information. Maybe I want to see my forecasted temperature high. So here's my forecast 1, temperature high. Copy that information again, go back in and edit, and this time I'm going to replace the temperature with forecast temperature high. Just to make it a little more clear, I might add an H in front of that so people know that that's what the high is going to be for that particular day. And then the last piece that we're going to want to grab here is going to be our icon. So here's our forecast 1 icon URL. We'll come in, Again, edit our template. We're going to find that web picture block that's currently set over here on the right, and we're going to replace that with our Forecast 1 icon URL. As with all of our bulletins, we're going to continue, finish, and OK. And now we've got our bulletin created there. Come to our management area, look at our active bulletins. And here we can see what that looks like, and we might need to do a little bit of tweaking here to take out that high for 75. But we can know now that we're rotating between information on what are we seeing for today as well as tomorrow. Very subtle, a little bit of information. What are we currently looking at? What are we looking at tomorrow? So even plugging in just tiny little things like that can help give a little bit more value to your digital signage. Allow people to see, hey, real quick, what's it going to be like tomorrow? That real brief look. Again, we're looking in New Bulletin, our Dynamic tab, working with those weather bulletins, utilizing all of our forecast options there. Now, Carousel gives you the ability to have up to 9 days worth of forecast information. So you can really create 3, 5, 7, 9-day forecast bulletins if you want to. And you can also find some templates on our design page at the new Tightrope Media Systems website, trms.com. We're going to have our weather templates available there. They're going to be in the same area that you see our pre-made channels. So you can always go there and download those. If for some reason they're not there, they're not working, because it is a new site, please feel free to contact our support team. They can get you the direct download link for those items as well. So that's number 3, awesomest thing in Carousel you might not be using. Number 2, active repeating bulletins. This one takes a little bit of getting to, so you can notice there in our where do you find this section, it's, for any bulletin types, when you click on New Bulletin, choose any bulletin. What we're going to end up doing is when we get to the scheduling screen, we're going to end up clicking on More, click on More, click on No. To get to the screen, we'll be able to set these active repeating bulletins. So we're here. We'll move to our Community and Video Zone, our large zone. We'll create a new bulletin, our Employee of the Month, because we really need to let these people know. So here from our scheduling screen, where we're setting our normal schedule of when this bulletin is a part of our rotation, we click on More. Here's where we can set some additional properties. What we see selected are our defaults. We're letting the system decide how long it's going to display for, what the transition will be, which is typically a fade, that there won't be any sound attached to it, what the description is, things like that. We're going to click on More again here. We're asked if we want to add any other bulletins to this one to create a group. In this case, we don't need to. You could certainly continue through that process if you want to. Otherwise, here we'll go ahead and click on No. And now we're asked what type of bulletin we want to create. Our default option and what we create most of our bulletins as in Carousel is these active bulletins. They appear when scheduled. They're part of the rotation. They are one of X. The other option we have here is to create an active repeating bulletin. It still appears as scheduled, but instead of being a part of the rotation, it creates and displays itself on a separate interval. Instead of being one of X, it shows up one every X. And when we hit continue, here's where we can set that option. So I can choose to have this pop up every 4 bulletins or every 40 bulletins. So depending upon how many bulletins you run in your system at any given time and what you put in here, you can make that bulletin show up more or less often. So for instance, your front lobby, You've got a welcome video, welcoming people into your place of business. Maybe you want to set that to run every 3 bulletins. So you see 3 bulletins, and then the welcome video plays. Now you see 3 more bulletins, and your welcome video plays. Now the person who's working the front desk might get pretty tired of that video, but almost every time somebody walks in, they have the ability to see that welcome video out in your lobby. Once you hit continue, it's the same confirmation screens that we're going to see elsewhere on how we want to create that bulletin. And we can make it show up on that separate interval once every 3 bulletins. We'll see that. Now on the management side, for those types of bulletins, that's when you're looking at your All Bulletins tab, you do see this option for the active repeating. You see the bulletins here, you can change their order, but essentially they'll show up once every 3 bulletins, and those 3 bulletins are counted here via this list. In this case, I only have 3, so really it's just going to show up as a 4th bulletin. If I remove one of these, I want to see my weather, my default, my weather, and then that active repeating. And then I'll see the default, the weather, the default, and then the active repeating. So it's constantly popping up every 3rd bulletin, no matter how many more I slide into that list. So that's one of the other things that we have available here in Carousel. Now we're coming to number 1. At least what I personally feel is one of the most awesomest things in Carousel that you might not be using, and that's radar images in weather. The web picture blocks inside of Carousel are very powerful and have this ability to create great looking weather information. So you can either choose to do radar images inside of a weather bulletin. You can even just create a separate bulletin that is just the radar image if you want to. It's up to you. Here we can see this bulletin that I created earlier today. And if we edit this, same as if we had created it, we're setting all of our settings on what do we want to have for our backgrounds, what information do we want to have displayed here. And all I've done is I've gone in and I've edited the bulletin, and I've added this block over here on the right-hand side. So it takes up pretty much the majority of that right-hand side. So instead of filling the temperature in over here, I've replaced it with this block. And all I did was come in, choose blocks, click New to set a new block. I kind of estimated the size and dragged it over and then kind of fiddled with it a little bit to make it look just right. But in the end, I set the name of that block to be radar, and I chose the type as a web picture. So these web pictures, if we come down to the picture panel here, allow us to fill in the URL of an image from a website. And Carousel goes out and pulls that image in and displays it inside of that particular block. And it's going to refresh at the same rate as our weather bulletins. So in most systems, it's going to be every 15 minutes. So whenever we see the weather information update, we're going to see that radar image update as well. Now, a lot of people tend to ask, where do you get radar images from? There's a number of different places you can pull from. WeatherBug used to be a very good place to pull them from. I prefer now to pull from the National Weather Service. I think it's a really nice, easy way to pull those in. So here in Minneapolis, we can go to weather.gov, and MPX is our particular Twin Cities National Weather Service area. So wherever you go, weather.gov, you can find where your local National Weather Service office is, and they'll have a page that looks very similar to this. Of course, these images are going to look a little different based upon your particular location. But right down here, you get an option for the local radar. And simply right-click on that, and you can copy this image URL. And if I open up a new tab, I can paste that here, and we can see what that looks like. So radar.weather.gov, light, some other information, MPX0PNG. So it is just this PNG file. All I've done is here in Carousel, I've plugged that URL into that web picture block. You can see here where it gives you the time of when that was last updated, so 1:13, and it looks like, yeah, it's not going to update right now because it updates every couple of minutes or so. But there's where we can pull in that radar information. We've plugged it inside of a weather bulletin. Again, if you don't want to do that, a lot of times, again, if you're utilizing one of our channels, when you click on New Bulletin, many times underneath Standard, you're going to find a bulletin called Traffic Camera. Now, don't let the name scare you. Traffic Camera is just what this was designed to be used for, but it could be used for anything. It's just simply a very large web picture block. So here's the URL of that image right now. I can paste in that URL of that radar image, and I can even replace the little text here that we see, Twin Cities radar. Update my preview. Again, we'll see that fill in. We can open up our preview here. We can see how that looks. That block fills in. We see our Twin Cities radar filling in on that block. So you could have the weather bulletin followed by the radar bulletin, or you could even plug that radar in next to it. So there are, at least what I feel are 7 awesome things that we can do in Carousel. Number 1 being radar images and weather to give you that extra little boost. Active repeating bulletins are a great way to put information up on the screen more or less often as you need to. Weather forecasts are another great value you can add to a small zone, just a subtle change. Multi-level full screen alerts, being able to override specific channels or whole numbers of channels as you need to. Excluding fonts to keep with branding. Countdown clocks to count down to donation drives or paperwork or deadlines. And then also utilizing our custom crawls for fonts and colors to really customize those looks and feels depending upon where things utilize, where you want to utilize those types of things. So we're going to take a little bit of time now, take a look at some of your questions and answer those. Michelle, what questions do we have so far?
We do have a few questions coming in. We have one from Alvin who's asking about guidelines for setting crawl speed. Let me expand a little bit on that.
Yeah, with regards to crawl speed, on the system, it's going to default to the very middle. So here in this crawl menu, our default here is this middle. And again, it's really dependent upon your particular system. And some of the things that can change that are how large your text is, because the larger your text is, the less text you're going to be able to see on the bottom of the screen at any given point in time. If the text is small, you'll get longer lines. It also is dependent upon your screen size. Widescreen display, you're going to have a longer line of text to be able to see at one time, versus a 4:3, it's going to be a little bit smaller. Typically, the middle is relatively good. If you do have some larger items, I've seen people even back it down 1 step. That works pretty well. That's probably about 75% of the systems I've seen are using either middle, the very middle, or 1 step towards slow. But again, it's dependent upon your system and kind of what you see. And also, what people are saying to you, hey, it's kind of hard to read that crawl. Slow it down a little bit, might be easier for people to read. All right?
Right, Alvin, I hope that answers your question. If you want us to expand on that a little bit more, you can just put more information in the question box. Our next question is from Melanie, who asks, can you make the background of the crawl a 0 opacity? So I think she means where you just see the words and no background behind it.
Melanie, we're unable to do that. The crawl is not overlaid over top of the bottom of our channel. The channel actually squeezes up a little bit to make room for that crawl down at the bottom. So kind of the way that you could kind of cheat that system is determine the exact color that the bottom of your channel is. You know, if you've got one or many zones down there, make sure they all end in the same color, and then simply set your background to be that exact same color. So on our system, technically it is a separate zone. It's squeezing up to make room for it. Somebody who's seeing that isn't necessarily going to realize it. They'll just see that it's a part of everything else that's being displayed.
All right, Melanie, I hope that answers your question. Our next question is from Scott, who is asking, we covered the feature of the countdown clock. Scott is curious if we have the ability to do counting up, like, for instance, the number of days without an accident, something like that.
So the countdown bulletin does have an option to change colors after that. I do believe that it does begin to count up after that. To tell you the truth, I have never actually tried that to see what it does. So maybe we can give it a shot here just to see what it looks like. We'll set that to black so we can actually see that. And let's count down to 1/1/2015. So it appears like this. So you'd see -5 months and 10 days. So depending upon how you kind of fill in your caption, time since last accident, and we can preview that here. You kind of get that little hyphen. You know, people might read that more as a hyphen unless as an actual minus sign. Then so you can see 5 months and 10 days, the time since last accident. All right.
All right. So I hope that could meet your needs, Scott. Thank you for asking that question. We have Alvin wondering about copyright concerns with the weather images. So Alvin asks, does taking the weather image from an outside website violate copyright? I don't know if you have any experience with that, Grant.
I do not. One of the other things that you certainly could do, and if you actually look at our weather bulletins, if you look at the preview here, the preview down here actually does say data provided by WeatherBug. So you could add another item in there, such as radar, provided from National Weather Service. But you probably would want to check, the particular website that you're pulling from and see what kind of restrictions, if any, they have with regards to utilizing those items.
Okay, so I hope that helps with your concerns, Alvin. Next question is from Patrick, wanting to know the URL from the weather.com URL that you were using earlier. Is it a GIF file or a PNG?
This particular one that I was pulling in from the National Weather Service is a PNG file. The system for those web picture blocks has the ability to take in JPEGs, PNGs. It can take in GIFs, but they will not animate. So Carousel cannot do the animated GIFs. It'll just show the first frame of that particular GIF when it comes up.
Okay. So that was from Patrick. Next question is from Bill, who wants to know, do the countdown clocks show up as individual pages or over the other pages? I'm not quite sure what that means.
The countdown clock would be a separate bulletin, so just like any other bulletin running in that particular zone. So if we were to create one in here, we would see the weather in that zone, then we would see this default bulletin, and then we would see our countdown clock. Now, if you had just that bulletin running in that particular zone, then it would be the only thing maybe that you're seeing in that zone. So you just always know that's where we look for our days since last accident or whatever information that might be.
Okay. Next, we have a question from Aaron, which is regarding the schedule update, how can you make the text for each show the same? Some of my text is smaller than the regular font. Are you clear what Aaron is asking?
For the event schedule bulletins, yeah, I think I understand what it is Aaron's looking for here. When you're creating an event schedule bulletin and pulling in from wherever that might be, when you're looking here at your template, you want to come in and edit that template. And here, when you're looking at this block where you're filling in the event information, you want to look down here underneath font and check out your size text to fit. So if you have size text to fit turned on, what will happen is Carousel will try and fit that, even the name of, say this, particular webinar here, 7 awesome things you're probably not using in Carousel is a lot longer than what would fit in there. So the system would size that down to fit inside of this block. If you uncheck this, you can manually set a specific size. And as long as you've told Carousel here underneath text alignment to also automatically wrap the text, it'll fill in what it can and then wrap and create a new line, and it'll push down this next block to make room for whatever it needs to. So we'd see 7 awesome things, or probably new line not using in Carousel. And then the next line would have our room information or description, whatever information. So those are the things you'd want to look at here. Uncheck that size text to fit, define a specific size, and then make sure you're telling the system to automatically wrap text. If you don't have that on here, it'll just run right off the edge of the bulletin. So those 2 things are probably what you want to look at, Aaron.
Okay, we have a few more questions. The next one is from James. The time bulletin is coming on and off. How do I keep it on all the time?
I'm not quite sure what you mean by that the time bulletin's coming on and off.
So
you could send a little bit more information into the questions there.
Yeah, James, give us a little bit of clarification there, and we will come back to that. Eileen is asking, on the countdown clock bulletin, can you change the background of the bulletin instead of having it just be a white page like it was in your example?
Yeah, you can change that to be whatever you have available as your backgrounds. So the default actually for clock bulletins is this kind of generic clock face. The My First channel has this default white background. I do have this seamless little slice of desert that I could show that information on if I wanted to. It would end up looking, probably if I set that more correctly here. And refresh. And there we go. You can kind of see what that would look like there. So yeah, you can set that to whatever backgrounds you want that to be within that particular zone. All right, Eileen?
All right. And next we have from Randall. He's wondering if you can do live traffic cameras in a zone. And I know, I'm not sure what your answer is for that, Grant, but yeah, there's a service I'll talk about, but I'll let you take the first stab at it.
Yeah, so it depends upon how you want to get those types of things in. Traffic camera bulletin is kind of designed with the particular, in this case, the MnDOT, the Minnesota Department of Transportation. Our traffic cameras here in Minnesota are actually still images that update after every few seconds. So this one's here is 144.11, and if I hit refresh here in a couple of seconds, we should see that update eventually here. But it's just a still image that they send out, and then it updates every couple of seconds or minutes or things like that. To get an actual stream of a camera, then you'd be looking at a different type of bulletin, which is available underneath Dynamic. It's the live video feed where you can plug in a URL. That's going to take the traffic camera and fill the zone with that information. So it's one of those things to kind of be aware of, is that is going to fill the zone instead of being just a block that's a part of a template. All right?
Okay, and then I was also just going to add, and I'll go ahead and put this in our chat window. We also have an experts forum webinar series for our broadcast side. For those of you who are using both broadcast and signage products from Tightrope, and in one of those webinars, we actually talked about a company called it's a product called Blue Commute that is made by Iteris, and they integrate with Carousel, particularly for those of you who are using Carousel on your broadcast channel. They are interested in folks around the country who would like to incorporate traffic cameras and traffic information into their Carousel channels, and they're looking, to find new places to expand their service. So if that's something you're interested in, it works with Carousel, and you can go to our YouTube channel. We'll have all of that information of our YouTube channel, Instagram, everything at the end. But it's just Tightrope Media on YouTube, and you can look under our PEG Experts forums for the one on Blue Commute by Iteris to find out a little bit more about this sort of more robust traffic information program if you're interested in that. So, Randall, if you have any additional questions, you can add those, or you can email us about traffic specific stuff, since we're trying to hit all the features we talked about here today. The next question is from Mark, who wants to know where all the templates are located.
If you're talking about, the templates in Carousel, so for creating bulletins from, are going to be in your media area underneath zone templates. That's where you're going to find these templates. If you're talking about the pre-made channels, so like this My First channel, this whole layout, so what we refer to as a channel layout, those are going to be on our website, so trms.com. And this, again, if you haven't seen it, is our new look. And here underneath products, you'll find design services underneath signage. And there's a section here for pre-made channels. And that's got the ability to download these pre-made channels onto your system. And then also information on how to install that as well.
All right, and we have another question from Hong about Carousel 6.3.5. And so they don't have the capacity that we show in this webinar. So I guess so Hong, you're wondering about upgrading. Then we'll have you, should they contact support, Grant, about an upgrade?
Yep, if you go to our website, so trms.com, you click into Carousel support. On the right-hand side, there's a little option that will ask you, hey, what are you looking for? And one of those options is I want to update my system. You can fill in the information and start a ticket that way. Yeah, so the system, the version that I'm currently using on my system is 6.5.2, which is currently the very latest version that's released at this time.
All right. So Hong, I hope that gives you everything that you need. The next question we have is from Tim. Can you show us again how you got the weather radar image from the National Weather Service?
Sure. So that's going to be here, weather.gov, and then I found our particular National Weather Service station, which is Twin Cities. So if you come into here, they changed their website around, so I don't remember exactly how to get to those anymore. But you should be able to search for National Weather Service and whatever your office might particularly be, and then you'll fill in. There's a little 3-digit code for that. In our case, it's MPX, so this is the National Weather Service Forecast Office in Twin Cities, Chanhassen, Minnesota. And in this page layout, at the very bottom, you'll see local radar. It'll be one of the 3 options. There's the weather or the local radar on the web app. So you can just right-click on that and do copy image URL. And then if you're using a different web browser, might have a little different name to it. Internet Explorer, I think, doesn't have the option to URL. You might have to go into properties to actually see the image URL and copy it there. And then when you paste that into your browser, you'll see just that particular item in there.
All right, our next.
You just want to make sure that your URL ends in PNG.
Our next question is from Tim, who asks, does Carousel have the ability to offer user interaction via touchscreen like a self-service kiosk?
Carousel does have, we refer to as interactive bulletins that allow you, if your player is that allows you to interact then with those types of things. There's some information about that, again, on our website, where we've got some examples of the different things you can do there, directory, wayfinds like that. These could be things that either you program yourself or our professional services team does a lot of that work as well. If you want to create directories, wayfinding, different types of kiosks, they can do that work as well.
Right, and I just posted the Carousel product page URL into the chat for everyone if you want to check out all of the services that we offer to supplement the basic Carousel system. Trying to get to our next question here. We are coming close to the end of the hour, so I'm going to try to stick with ones that are largely relevant to the features that we're referring to here in this webinar. Coming back to James, who was giving us further clarification, the time in the time block disappears on one channel, but the second channel stays on. Does that make more sense? What he's asking?
Unfortunately, it doesn't quite give me enough information. James, it might be something that we need to connect offline, and we can talk about that. That might be, especially if you're only seeing it on one player, it might be something with with that particular player that's having some issues versus something that's in the software itself. But we can connect offline and we can take a look at it.
Yes, and just for everybody who's still on the line, we will post all the contact information for myself and for Grant. If you have questions about Carousel, if you have questions about future webinars, you can contact us that way, given that we only have a limited amount of time here. So if you have anything, a little more specific to your system and how it's set up, we'll just address those outside of this setting. The next question is from Mark. He wants to know if you can use a different picture for the time, a different image.
Yep, yeah, that's that background image that we were talking about in those clock bulletins. So you can set that background image to be whatever you want.
And from Alexander, for the countdown bulletin, can you change the font size and formatting, such as line breaks?
Line breaks, unfortunately, you don't have much options with regards to that, but you certainly can set your fonts, colors. So the color is up top here. You don't have to change the opacity up to 100%, but you can change your font down here to be what you would like that particular font to be.
And pretty sure we can get a quick answer on this one. Karen wants to know, does Carousel run on tablets? The event notification demo just gave us an idea of how to put signs out for meetings at our conference rooms.
Yes and no, depending upon what it is you're trying to utilize those tablets for. So as long as they're running a Windows operating system, preferably Windows 7 is the highest that we currently support. you can run the player engine on that if you're looking for signage. Otherwise, you do have some, you can always use Carousel, the web interface, the user interface, can be on anything, a desktop, a tablet, a phone, all of those types of things.
Okay, and Eileen is wondering if you can throw up the URL for the MnDOT intermittent traffic images that you had earlier. Can you put that up on the screen for?
Yeah, the one that I had.
Or you can actually, I think if you just put it in the chat, Grant, then everybody can see it.
I can do that. So this is the one that's actually I think all of our pretty much all of our templates are going to default to. Oh, that's the radar URL. Oh, and I should send this to everybody. Oh. I think Michelle will have to resend those out to everybody.
Yeah, I will.
My webinar does. Yeah.
I'll copy that.
But Michelle will get those out to you. Those are the two URLs. If you just go to the MnDOT website, if you're in Minnesota, there's a traffic cameras section there, and you can find your specific traffic cameras. You can get the URLs for those things there.
Okay. Got 1 and 2. Let's see. Mark wants to know if you can come to his office and do all of it for him.
I mean, I technically could. Certainly, you could contact your dealer and choose to purchase some on-site training time. That's always available.
Chris wants to know, is there a way to insert cablecast video into the carousel side, possibly create a squeeze back? I'm pretty sure you can, but from the other way, like starting with cablecast, right?
There may be ways to do it, but it would take a lot of work and a lot of different kind of moving pieces that you'd have to set up. So somebody on the broadcast side might have some better information and maybe even a rundown of how you might be able to do that there.
Okay. And again, I think I've addressed most of the questions that specifically pertain to the topics we're covering today. Advanced settings on carousel features. If I've missed your question, again, Grant, can you throw up the slide with our contact info? I'll give folks a minute to copy that stuff down. We did have one person ask about the link to watch this webinar again later, and I am going to send that out to everyone who registered, because I know there were some people today who registered and weren't able to get in because, fortunately, people were so excited that we were completely full at one point. So we will send that out to everybody once it's up on YouTube. But because we're recording right now, we don't have the link for it currently. So just look for that email, and you'll be able to connect with us later. And again, on the slide here, you'll see we did just release our new website. If you want to take a look at the new navigation, it's dynamic, so it should look just as good at your desk as it does on your phone or your tablet. We've got new product feature videos that are really cool, that you can kind of really see at a glance what our products do for you. So if you're currently Carousel and maybe you're looking for some new broadcast solutions, you can take a look at that. And you can also take a look at our newsroom, which is now searchable, and our searchable knowledge base as well are some great new features that we've got on that new website for you. You can also, again, take a look at our YouTube channel, Tightrope Media. That is where this webinar recording and all of our webinar recordings are hosted. And it's a great tool, particularly for like stuff today where you're looking for just additional kind of advanced user settings to make things look just a little bit better than the default. And I think that's all the questions that we have for today. Grant, did you have any final remarks for people?
I just wanted to thank everybody for coming in and visiting. I hope we answered most of your questions. You do see my contact information up there. If you're looking to get some questions answered, feel free to send them there. If you want to schedule training, things like that, you can reach out to me. Otherwise, a lot of times I might see you need to go back to your dealer and actually purchase that training time. But if you have some available, feel free to contact me and we can get something on the schedule. Thanks for coming out today, guys.
Yes, thanks everybody. And one last reminder, this is part of a series. So we hope that you'll join us for the next edition, and we hope that you'll check out the previous edition of the series. And my information again is there if you want to let me know about how today's webinar went for you. If you've got ideas about future webinar topics that are of interest to you, again, you can just use my email. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll get notified every time we add recordings, and that way you don't have to block out time in your schedule. You can do it on your own time. And we look forward to future events such as these. So thank you all for joining us, and I will now conclude the webinar.